Hello and welcome.
Do you want to try that again?
Hello, good evening.
Sorry,
and
my voice is
welcome.
breaking. Hello.
That's
Eventually, welcome to puberty.
I know. Hello, Daddy. This is going to be interesting for the editor. Hello and welcome. You are listening to Let's Drone Out. Tonight, you're joined by our wonderful puppet master, Andrew Frank.
Good evening.
Everyone's favourite Curry Kitten.
Hello.
A very interesting and wonderful shirt, Stephen.
Hello.
And Chris from the Bmfa, the Drone Support Officer.
It's a slightly official title, isn't it? It's fun.
What does a drone support officer do? Sounds like you should have some kind of uniform.
Sounds
Well,
like
actually,
it's
that
standing
was
underneath
standing underneath
drones.
a really big, heavy drone and hold it up like that.
Like one of the two behind you, maybe.
Well, this is Bfma on that side and Arthur on this side. The two heavy lift drones that I fly for work. Yeah, I suppose drone support officer. I'm here to support the Bmfa membership and the new BDF membership with their drone inquiries. You know, help people understand where they can and can't fly, and all the sort of stuff that comes up on a regular basis. Usually technical questions relating to the open categories and what classification am I in, what do I do with Article 16 and stuff like that.
So Andy's got bored of answering these questions and found someone else to forward them all onto, right?
Yeah. I mean, Andy Simmons is still the club support officer for the Bmfa, so he still deals with an awful lot of those questions. It's just when it comes in and it's more drone related now, it comes to me. So that's my speciality. So we're just, as the drone side of things is growing, we're just sort of splitting it and making it more accessible, so there's more support for different people.
Cool, because you've I mean, this isn't your. You were saying that you've only been here like a few months, but you've been doing a lot for Bmfa drone-wise beforehand, haven't you?
Yeah. So my background is I run Altitude Aerial Photography as a company, so I fly these and do TV filming and stuff like that. But about 12 years ago is when I started flying my first drones, back when we all used to take the Nintendo nunchucks apart to get the accelerometers out and build our own control boards and all that kind of stuff. Or if you were really posh, you had somebody had smashed their iPhone free and you got the accelerometers from that. So about 8-9 years ago, I then got invited in to join the special interest group when we were discussing FPV and getting the exemption improved so that we could get rid of the requirement for the buddy box and go to observers and spotters and stuff like that. And then a couple of years after that, I got invited onto the achievement scheme to write a multi-rotor test, because we had fixed wing tests, helicopter tests, glider tests. So it's probably about 8 years ago I wrote the A and the B certificate for multi-rotors. And then a year after that, I got invited onto the committee full-time, and I'm now chairman of the committee as you come forward. So that's me as a volunteer with the Bmfa. And then obviously when the Bmfa were looking for an employee to work with drones, it's kind of, I'm there already. I do it for a living. I do it for a hobby, my all-encompassing passion. But then I still make kind of a good crossover, because I still fly helicopters, I still fly model aeroplanes, gliders. It's all radio controlled cars, boats. There's a radio controlled car sitting up on top of the shelf up there.
And this, before we went live, you were showing us your FPV quads that you were trying to fit through some benches at Buckminster.
My little 3.5-inch Titan H3 there. It just needs a couple of screws putting back in and some new propellers. It turns out that the gates that I fly through, well, you're supposed to fly through the hole, aren't you? Not through the gate itself.
It's open to interpretation. It really depends what you can get away with.
The battery has definitely seen some better days. I think we need to find some salty water to dispose of that.
And you had a BDF event at Buckminster recently, right?
Yes. So we've kind of started bringing the BDF events in with all of the ASRC events, because the ASRC events achievement scheme, it's for training and teaching. So it's a natural thing to invite the drone guys into that as well. By guys, obviously ladies as well, just general term, in drone folk. So we can teach people to fly the drones. But then on the 11th, we had our first camera drone dedicated event. So for people with things like Mavics and Phantoms, the opportunity was to come down, learn how to do a risk assessment and some basic sort of safety training, a site planning experience for about an hour and a half. Then we actually went out into the runway and did some flying flight training. And then towards the end of the afternoon, we kind of looked at a little bit of Photoshop, how to edit those pictures together afterwards. A good option to practice.
I saw you posted on Facebook as well that you were introducing some people to FPV during the course of the event.
Yeah, Andy and I had this great game that Andy came up with, person tipping. So one of us flies aerobatic FPV and the other person puts goggles on people, and we just see if we can get people to fall over. I think the idea is if we can get 10 people in 10 goggles, we can just do it like bowling and see if we can get
Did you have a total tally up on the wall?
No, we've not managed to topple anyone over. We're not harsh, but we have had a few people raise their toes and have a good wobble, but we're always there to catch them. But, the idea is to give them that experience and see if they're interested in shifting over. So
you get them to do a power loop and see if they just carry on leaning back.
Yeah, well, I love to go shooting straight up and then just do like 8 very rapid rolls. And people are either freaked out by the rapid roll, or quite often it's a slow roll. So if the fast roll doesn't get them, you go up and you do a nice sort of 3 or 4 second really slow roll, and that's normally the one that gets them.
That's evil, but very funny.
Yeah.
So you come from a heli background, right? And then you're looking at how to do A and B certs for quads. How did you make that different for quads? What do you
for the quadcopters? It's basically, when you think about how a helicopter and a multi-rotor fly in terms of manual flight. So if we ignore self-stabilizing GPS holding things like the Mavics and so on, just your racing quads, there are a lot of similarities in how they fly in terms of the pitch, the roll, that kind of throttle control and how you get one to hover. The transition, the differences is, for example, I've got 3D quads now that you can reverse the pitch to hold against the wind.
Right, yeah.
You can take a helicopter where you do a stall turn maneuver. Part of that exercise is to put negative pitch on and compensate for the wind, which with most quadcopters isn't actually possible. So took those 2 exercises out and put in a loop-the-loop instead. So it's kind of just modifying it and making it relevant. We had a lot of people saying, you can't loop a quad. Quads don't loop. They will. It's just a different technique. The actual style and the method of doing it is different to an aeroplane.
Yeah. So you've been doing a lot with you're an employee of the Bmfa. So how does the BDF separate, or how is it different from the Bmfa, or what's the connection?
Okay. So the first thing is it's kind of not really separate. So a BDF membership is a form of Bmfa membership. So when you join the British Drone Flyers, you're getting the same core package that the Bmfa members get. So you get the same insurance, which is class leading, 25 million public liability, comes with 35,000 personal injury as well. So if you do decide to slice a finger off in a multi-rotor propeller, not that we recommend doing that, there is money available on claims. So the key thing is that the core package is essentially the same, and you're still a Bmfa member. What we've tried to do is create a membership type that is more suitable for drone operators. So when you look at most people who probably fly model helicopters and planes, they're joining a club. The club runs January to December, so they run January to December, and it's kind of like that kind of atmosphere. A lot of drone flyers, especially the camera guys, they're probably unique in terms of that they fly on their own. Probably the drone goes on holiday with them for selfies. They go out and they video a monument when they're out doing a walk, that kind of thing. So the standard membership pattern doesn't sort of sit with their style of use. So the 2 key differences between a Bmfa membership and a British Drone Flyer membership. The first one is it's a rolling 12-month membership from the day you join. So whereas Bmfa is January to December, the BDF is from the day you join. So if you join now, you'll have membership up until mid-September next year. The other key difference is that most of the camera drone guys, they're probably not interested in balsa stick models, helicopters, gliders, and all the other stuff that goes in the Bmfa news. So we've just basically created a digital online-only BDF news, which will come out with stuff that's more relevant. So all the latest on drone legislation, laws, regulations, as well as stuff about camera techniques, how to learn to fly a quadcopter manually, the stuff that's probably a lot more relevant to them than is, someone making stuff out of balsa and tissue paper.
So all the people that complain about getting a load of tree through their letterbox with a load of RC stuff in it, they can opt out of that and just have an online version that's a bit more based around. I guess is it mainly sort of aerial photography and videography? based?
The BDF news, no, it's drones in general. So we have had the BDRA give us some racing articles as well. It's not just for camera drones. So again, a lot of the the people that might be FPV racing might just be doing it themselves on the woods, rather than actually joining a club per se. So one of the things in terms of my future goal is to try and encourage some more drone clubs to start forming up. There's a couple of aspects to that. One is that it creates that nice environment where somebody that wants to get into this hobby can go and learn safely rather than doing it potentially dangerously in their back garden or somewhere else. But also it just kind of builds that camaraderie in the hobby. I think when you go to places, for example, Western Park the other week with the BDRA racing, if somebody crashes a quadcopter at one of those events, nobody sits there laughing at them going, well, fix it yourself. They'll all rally around, find some soldering irons, find some solders, some screws, some spare props for them, and see what they can do to get them back in the racing, even if they're a competitor. So it's a nice atmosphere, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would the club membership work the same then for a BDF member versus a Bmfa member?
Yeah. So if you're a British Drone Flyer member, that. So the BMFA affiliated clubs, you have to have BMFA insurance. The BDF insurance, with the BDF membership, it's the same insurance. So you've got the same access to a club in theory. The only caveat I would say there is we can't necessarily control the clubs. So what a club does in terms of its own individual rules, there are clubs out there that are fixed wing only. There are some, for example, Farnham Heli Club is helis only, but they take drones, and there are some drone only clubs. So what the club set as their own rules is down to what they've set the club up for, I guess, and their own individual membership. But in terms of what we offer, the support, the package, it's the same. So there's no disadvantage, I think, is the key thing to being a British Drone Flyer member. And there's no disadvantage to being a BMFA member. It depends what sort of information you want to get from us, whether that's the British Model Flying Association news or the British Drone Flying news, really.
So hopefully that also clears up Richard Warwick in the chat's question. Will BDF insurance cover RC planes as well as drones?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same insurance. So we've often come across, there's quite a few myths, and one of the articles I'm writing at the moment is a bit of a myth-busting exercise. And one is, that clubs don't like drones and drones aren't insured by the BMFA. Absolutely they are, and vice versa. Aeroplanes and helicopters are all part of the BDF insurance. It's all the same.
Speaking of kind of more responsible approach to flying, I noticed one of the headings over at British Drone Flyers is the A2 CFC, something that we've touched on in the past, and a lot of our listeners, I think, are flying recreationally, and they view this as a way of, putting a bit more safety around their recreational flying. Maybe they don't want to go for a full professional qualification, but this would give them some more legitimacy. Could you explain what the A2 CFC can do for people and what it entails?
Okay. So I think the first one it's another one of the myths that I come across quite regularly, that the A2 is only required for commercial operations. It's not. The A2 is required to operate in the A2 open category. So when you look at the open categories, you've got A1, A2, A3. When you go above the open category, you go into the specific category, which is where you fly stuff like this in London, for example. And then you go to certified, which is manned aviation risk, so flying taxis, for example. And then you have obviously Article 16, which is another key benefit of being a British Drone Flyer membership. You can still use the Article 16 from the BMFA because you're part of the BMFA. But in terms of the A2, when you think about what you can fly, so the Mavic Mini and the Mini 2, the 250 gram and below aircraft, that kind of goes straight into the A1 category. When you go above 250 grams, what a lot of people don't realize is that all the aircraft then default into the A3 open category because of the weight, where you can go up to 25 kilos.
Right.
So what you end up with there is you've got to be 150 meters away from this. You've got various different restrictions.
So anyone who's flying a freestyle quad at maybe 600 grams is getting lumped in with someone who's flying a massive camera drone of 5 or 10 kilos.
Exactly that. You're in the same category as someone flying 25 kilos. So if you're a BDF or a BMFA member, straight away you've got access to Article 16, which takes a lot of those A3 regulations and actually brings a lot of the distances down. Allows you to do things like flying your local park as long as you've done a suitable risk assessment, and a lot of safe elements then open up. What the A2 does is it allows you to fly in the A2 category, and that's what the A2 CFC or the A2 Certificate of Competency allows. So with the A1, A2, A3, there's no longer a distinction between hobby flying and commercial flying. It used to be you had to have the permit for commercial operation. That's all gone.
Let's
So
just
it's
break
all
down
about
those categories. You say A1, A2, A3. You touched on A3 as being like the huge drones, and
Yeah.
A1 characterized as being Mavics and smaller stuff. What does A2 mean in that case?
So the A2 is up to 4 kilos for what we class as C2 class drones, and the C2 class drones don't exist yet.
Right.
But when they start coming out, there will be aircraft coming out that have 3 meters per second as a minimum, like a sort of slow speed setting, and some other features, and that's what they'll need to get the C2 classification. So without those available, what you would then have is a legacy section, and the legacy aircraft is anything that's placed on the market before the end of next year. So that's basically everything that's for sale now and everything that we've built ourselves. So
And
our own
DIY
racing
craft,
quads,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
own racing
So
quads.
the open part, is that relating to the DIY aspect because it's not certified?
What the open means is it's open to all. So it's a
Right.
category that's not regulated. When you go into the specific category, I'll skim on this very quickly because it's probably not the sort of thing, but the specific category is what has replaced the PFCO scheme, which replaced the permit for aerial work, became the permit for commercial operation. Some 1st of January, it's become something called an operational authorization. The operational authorization is a predetermined risk assessment, PDRA 01, and that's where you apply very similar to the old PFCO scheme. So you do a GVC, General Visual Line of Sight Certificate qualification, through one of the recognized entities. You get a recognized certificate qualification. They cost anything from £500 to £2,000, depending on which training school you go through. You then apply for an operational authorization from the CAA, where you supply them an operations manual and all the other gubbins. That costs about £250 per year.
This is all very serious professional drone operator stuff then, this category.
What that allows you to do is take stuff like this and do overflight in built up areas and stuff like that. So it's when you look at the old system was very simple. It was, you were a hobby flyer and you flew 0 to 20 kilos in category A and you followed those regulations. And if you were working commercially, you got a permit for commercial operation, you went into category B and you followed those regulations. And if you wanted to do something really weird, such as, for example, the one we did like a couple of years ago, which was building a life-size Chitty Chitty Bang Bang flying replica, that goes into the certified category, where you write operational safety cases and you have to do something quite unique through the CAA.
You've got to sit down and write a lot of risk assessments then.
And
exactly
talk a lot with the CAA, right? That's the main thing. And I think the
Fine,
CAA kind of got bored of that and decided they should formalize things and let people do things a bit more with less actual one-on-one conversations.
So is this kind of a side effect of the proliferation of more lightweight semi-professional camera drones, then they've brought this qualification into effect?
Yeah, I think the changes. I mean, that's I love myth busting tonight. You're gonna see a theme coming up. But one of the other myths that comes up a lot, and I came across this a lot when we were running the BDF stand supporting the BDRA at Western recently, was the number of people who go, "Oh, bloody drones! They changed all these rules because of the drones." The current drone regulations and the changes, they're not because of drones. There is an element of drones that have gone into that, but manned aviation has evolved. And just when you look at normal model aircraft, when you used to buy a model airplane, you'd go to a model flying club because you'd crash it in 30 seconds if you tried to do it yourself. Whereas now you can go and buy something that's got safe technology, self-stabilizing on it. Things like the Parrot Disco flying wing, for example, you throw it in the air and it goes around in a circle above your head until you tell it to land. So it's not just drones, it's technology as a whole.
Well, also when
it's not
it's
just
made
multi-rotors, we should say. It might be drones in the formal classification of autonomous vehicles, but it's not multi-rotors.
It's not. A lot of people say
there's even stuff that doesn't have like a flight controller on it. If it's made of foam, you can have a few more goes before it disintegrates.
Yeah, exactly that.
And the other thing is, there's YouTube and the internet and forums and things where people can help you without having to go to a club. And you can learn a lot more without, having to go to a club to actually find out how anything works.
Yeah, social media certainly opened a lot of doors as well. So, I mean, the whole world has changed.
Like it does seem. I'm not utterly convinced that it's not all down to drones though, because it seems to be.
Which side are you on, Curry?
Well, devil's advocate. I don't think people have. There's been some people being idiotic, but the news report going on about various bits and the drones done this and drones putting drugs in jail, and Gatwick, it was full of drones. Honest, it was. It just seems to have demonised to such an extent that the public are like, "What are you doing about it?" And the government's like, "Well, you're introducing all these rules." You never hear like somebody flying a little plane in the park and
convenient scapegoat.
I'm outraged. This must be banned. It's always
when you
multi-rotors.
bring up Gatwick, that's another good example of the part of the myth about drones are to blame.
I'm absolutely convinced there was no
press
drones.
Out saying there's no evidence, didn't they?
As far as the greater public go, there were, and it's all you people flying them. You're to blame for everything.
There definitely was a drone there, because there was provably a police drone there.
There was a police
drone. A lot of
there.
people spotted.
But as soon as that's in the public conscience, you can't get that back out, can you? That's the problem. You can't undo all the damage.
No, this is one of the things that I'm doing as the drone support officer, and it's the drum that I'll be banging all weekend at Duxford when we're talking to the general public. When you take things like the Gatwick incident, whether there was or whether there wasn't a drone, I believe even the VP of DGI has just said today, hasn't he, that there wasn't. But irrelevant of whether there was or not.
There was one there. There was a police drone, which people kept telling the police they'd seen.
Yeah. But people blame Gatwick as a reason for the rule changes. But when you actually look at what's come in, the EASA regs were actually on their way 2 or 3 years before Gatwick ever happened.
We are well aware here, because we've definitely got at least 2 listeners who had their comments on public record, because we were talking about it for years on here.
But so the regulations were already changing before, because the CAA, people will sort of slate the CAA and say they're the Campaign Against Aviation, or whatever you want to come up with. But the reality is they are quite switched on. It's sad in some respects that maybe not enough of them that do the job understand drones or fly drones potentially, but they do know what they're doing for the most part. And they're quite aware that, the one idiot that goes down the park with a Mavic and does something stupidly dangerous, or Gatwick, doesn't represent everybody. They fully understand that the British Model Flying Association has over 30,000 members who, for the most part, are following the rules, acting sensibly, and that there are thousands of people who aren't members following the rules and acting sensibly. The comparison I always make is, if you think about cars, the number of people out there on the road right now with cars that don't have insurance, tax, MOTs, driving at high speed, driving on the wrong side of the road, and doing stupid stuff, it doesn't stop everybody else from driving a car. So the stuff from Gatwick that has come in that was changed probably because of Gatwick is just some of the fines and the punishments that are put in for those that break the rules. The rules themselves weren't done because of Gatwick.
Yeah, I mean, we're in danger of getting onto a rant of but even people that don't break rules and get caught, they don't get. Anyway, moving back to where we were.
We haven't even mentioned the Google and Emerson conspiracy yet, Frank.
The A2 category. Let's jump back onto the A2 category then. So the A2, essentially, you don't need it to operate commercially. So a lot of people assume that's what it's for. You need it to operate in the A2 category. That's what it's for. So when you are flying, it used to be that, like I said, you were a hobbyist or you were commercial, and it was one set of rules, either or. And the hobby rules was you had to be 150 meters from congested areas, 50 meters from people. That's pretty much the A3 rules. When you look at the regulations for the A3 open category, that's pretty much what the hobby rules used to be. So what the CIA have looked at, and the DFT and the ASA and all these people, and obviously Dave Phipps from the Bmfa has been out there banging his drum for us as well. You've got all these, like you say, new drones and new things. So they've decided that the best way to actually do it is on risk. And they acknowledge that there's a huge difference between somebody flying a Mini 2 and somebody flying a 15-kilo, 6-foot hexacopter. So the risk level for something small that's low speed, that has a low kinetic energy, which is basically what it's all boiled down to, can go into different categories. The Mini 2,
there is one point I've just thought of that we should probably make, because it hasn't been mentioned. Because we were saying, it's all based on risk and it's not based on commercial versus recreational anymore. There is still the issue of insurance.
Yeah, insurance. We'll get to that.
Yeah. The issue of operatorability as well. Someone buying a DJI drone that they've just got off of Argos is probably likely to be a little unsure of how it flies, whereas I'd expect you with a giant hex probably don't want to smash it to pieces, and probably a little bit more cautious.
I've been a commercial examiner for a few years for different training schools, and I've met people who turn up to do a test for a commercial, and they're hopeless. But in terms of the risk level, the A2 lets you fly up to 2 kilos of legacy aircraft. So that's what it is. So the A2 CFC itself, if you think about the Damares test or the Bmfa's RCC equivalent, it allows you to sort of do a little bit of theory and knowledge. The A2 sits above that, so you'll see a little bit more coming into it about thinking about, weather, what sort of cloud formations are coming towards you, how to do a risk assessment, what sort of stuff needs to be done. So it's just a little bit of a higher step up. It's still an online course, so you'd sit at home, read through a load of modules, a bit like an open university thing, so you can do it in your own time, at your own pace. And at the end of it, you'll sit down and do a test on a laptop with the webcam on, and you show the webcam around the room, make sure that there's no one stood on the other side, or there's not a whiteboard on the wall with all the key details on it, and you go through the test. When you do the test, it gets assigned to a flyer ID. So if you're currently a member of the Bmfa or BDF and you've done the RCC test for remote pilot competency, you still actually have to do a flyer ID. I believe Dave Phipps is in negotiation with the CAA at the moment to actually make the RCC more recognised as a flyer ID, but there's just obviously systems transitions to be made and something to
admin
somewhere.
Lots of admin.
Yeah, I think it's more of a computer integration thing, but it's above my pay grade, should we say that?
Yeah.
It sounded like the operator ID scheme was certainly plagued with its share.
Yeah. But so your average person who's not a member of anything, there's basically the above 250 grams, you got the A3, below 250 grams, you got the A1. And then if you join the BDF, BMFA, or FPV or whatever, you've also got the Article 16 that's offered to the model flying associations, which, depending on what you're doing, you've either got some extra permissions or you might have to do some more paperwork to get some extra permissions to fly things. And then with the membership of BFA or BDF, you've also got 50% off on getting this A2 CFC course that would get you more, presumably.
So the UAV Academy, I mean, the A2 courses range from about £99 to £300, depending on where you go. The UAV Academy were already one of the more competitive ones at £99, and they basically agreed a discount to us for £49. So Andrew Bailey, the manager of the owner, as it were, of UAV Academy, he's a model helicopter flyer himself. He's been a member of the BMFA for many years, so he's quite respectful of what we do, and likewise we're quite respectful of what he does, so it makes a very good partnership in that respect.
Cool. And you were talking as well a while ago that you were at Western with the BDRA. We saw you up there. So what's the connection between the BDF/BMFA and the BDRA? How's that all working together?
Well, the BDRA is still their own association running their own events, and we're just going to continue to support them and offer what we can. Coming back to some of the myths, again, I think some people have always been that we don't support drones in general and that the BMFA is more interested. It's the British Model Fixed Wing Association. We're interested in all of it, and that's the thing with the governing body for the sport of model flying, and drone racing is another form of model flying. So as far as we're concerned, it's part of that big umbrella. So Andy, for example, I think was on one of the original committees for the BFPVRA, was it, the British FPV Racing Association, which then became the BDRA. But the BDRA reached out to us recently and asked for a little bit of funding for the large LED monitor that was on display at Western. But we decided to go a little bit further, give them some funding, take down a T-urn and make sure that we had refreshments available for all the pilots. So a little bit of a PR publicity for us to let them know that, we do care about drones. We definitely like them, and we want to make sure that we're supporting all the disciplines.
Yeah, because there was a bit of maybe a bit of issues a few years ago. I mean, we covered this. There was the FAI World Championships, and there wasn't a Team GB for a while. I've been told at Western that there is now going to be a Team GB, and that's all been smoothed over. So
we'll make sure we sort something out at the end of the day, because we want to make sure we're supporting things. I don't know the difference, what that is. I don't know the history because I wasn't a member of staff at the time, so I can't comment. In terms of what happens from the future, it's not something I'm actually aware of fully at the moment, to be honest. So again, it's if the BDRA guys come to me and say this is what we want to do, then we'll see what we can do to help. That's what we're here as BMFA to do. When it comes to that, side of things, it's a little bit out of my experience level, to be honest. If Andy Simmons is around in the comments thread, maybe watch for a reply from him, because he'll probably ping something up.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
But you, since you have been working with the BMFA, are you like the kind of in touch with the BDRA? And I mean, it seems like it's all going well, seeing as you kind of help them out and everything.
Yeah, no, we've got a Facebook chat group now, as it were, on Messenger. Myself, Andy, Jamie from the obviously the committee, and so on. And one of the things we're already doing is trying to help them sort out their next racing event, because they've trying to sort out a venue. So we've just moved the pylon racing around at Bmfa Buckminster so that they can host their next event up there in the beginning of October. So again, it's the thing for Buckminster. If you look at it, poor Manny has a massive job every year of trying to get probably 100+ events into 50 weekends, and it's multitasking for him.
I've seen we've had a comment on Facebook saying the BDF are sponsoring the World X Class.
Yes, we've also put some funds towards some gates and events, because that's coming up in mid-October, which is the X Class racing and also some fixed wing racing. So again, that's, since I joined, I've been aware of Martin Rye from Fossil Stuff and a few of those kind of guys. And I know that they've been trying to get it kickstarted over here in the UK. And I just think, the best foot forward is not to let them do it on their own, but see what we can do to help them promote it, bring it on board, and sort of not take over, because that's their thing. We want to let them do it, but at the same time, be there for them if they need any help.
Yeah, because you've collectively, as an organisation, had a few, almost a century of experience of making events and regulations.
For the BMFA next year, so
yeah. So of the kind of the bureaucracy and things that go on to make things happen.
Yeah. The thing with the BMFA, you have to remember, is that there's a handful of staff. There's myself, Dave Phipps, Andy, Manny, and a few others. But the rest of the people, we're all volunteers. So, I work a part-time job for the BMFA. I run a full-time business, and then I run a part-time position as a volunteer. So all the stuff I do on the achievement scheme, that's voluntary. So the videos that we've made for the fixed wing, A certificate, B certificate demos, the helicopter ones, that's all been done voluntarily. The next one coming out will be the multi-rotor A and B. That's already done. We're just waiting for an opportunity to get 4 or 5 people together to do it. And we're going to film the camera drone one at the same time. So that was another new test actually for this year, was the camera drone test. So it's the first time we've allowed a test with GPS on board. So
is that not just a basic proficiency test, but an actual A cert? Yeah. So if you take the A cert and the B cert multi-rotor, you have to do those in manual. If you do the A cert with self-stabilization on board, so ATI, horizon, angle, any of those modes, it would be a BPC. When you look at the modern camera drones, quite a few of them don't even allow you to switch the GPS off. If you take the Mavics, for example, it's permanently on. So what I've tried to do there with the test that I've written is make it more about putting the aircraft into awkward angles, so that the pilot has to sort of react left and right, but at 90 degrees off. So there's an element of pilot skill that we can measure and judge while the aircraft's still using an element of electronic stabilization. So there's no B certificate, unfortunately, for the camera drones, simply because there's not enough of a challenge to create there. But the A cert can be done with GPS, and the BPC certificate can be done in ATI mode. But it is a... Sorry, go on. For people that kind of don't know, kind of the A certs and the B certs and the sort of the achievement scheme of the BMFA, that's kind of a BMFA internal thing to kind of recognize levels of proficiency, right? And typically,
it's a personal achievement scheme.
Yeah.
Another myth that we get is that the A cert is required. It's a license to fly unsupervised. You have to have it for the insurance of the BMFA. You have to have it to fly at a club. It's not. They're purely personal achievements. A lot of the clubs will ask you to have an A cert to fly unsupervised, because it's their way of their own sort of chairman, as it were, and secretary of the club making their own rules to protect their own safety. But it's not a BMFA requirement. They're just purely personal goals. Yeah. Some people assume that the B cert is a license to fly at a model air show and stuff like that. You don't even need an A cert to fly at a model show if you're well enough known. The B cert is just another way that people use to measure your ability.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of from personal experience. What ends up happening is when it's a small group of people that you personally know, it's fine because you know what people are going to be like, and you know who you can trust to fly somewhere, and you know who's a good enough pilot and who isn't just going to wig out and do something stupid in front of a crowd, or just in a place where you're pretty keen on not pissing off your neighbors. But when you start getting more people and that you don't personally know, you have two options. You either tell them to go away, or you have a way of kind of having a standards that you can get people to meet without you personally knowing them. And that's kind of what the A cert and B cert have been used for by clubs and by event organizers.
The A cert definitely gets used a lot for that level of, can I turn my back on this person and know I'm not going to get hit in the head?
So there's a question come up there from Numbskull FPV saying, can we do the course with an FPV drone? And I think what he means by that is, can we fly FPV? Because these are
rather line of sight.
For which test, sorry?
For the multi-rotor A and B, I presume.
Right, so for the multi-rotor A and B, they are predominantly designed for what I would class as a manual flight aircraft. So something like that, that's a 7-inch. This could easily be set up for long-range FPV. I do this for line-of-sight aerobatics. But the A and the B certificate are designed for line-of-sight manual flight. So as long as, you could use a racing drone. I think I did mine with a Gravity 280, if you know those.
Yeah.
Little 6-inch racer in manual flight. The camera drone is definitely designed for those things like Phantoms, Mavics, Inspires, anything that's stabilizing. In terms of sorry, go on.
FPV versus LOS, are you expecting the operator to not have goggles on when they're doing those tests, or?
So the A and the B cert, are line of sight. So you have to be able to watch the drone. What we have got is an A cert extension for general FPV, which is where we just fly around, do some procedural turns, fly around the site and come back. And we've also got an A cert extension for FPV racing. And the A cert extension for that is going around gates, through flags and stuff like that, racing starts and so on. In fact, that's the only test that we've got where we actually allow a crash. Normally, if you crash in a test, it would be considered a very much instant fail. For the FPV extension, we understand that hitting gates is something that happens a lot. So in the FPV extension, it's if you hit a gate, we actually want you to shut the throttle and drop, not try and punch the throttle and end up 100 feet in the air going into a non-controlled area.
Is that like a required test maneuver? Just crash and disarm?
Well, no. It's the idea is that in the rules it says if you do hit a gate and crash, that's what we want to see you do, and you can reset. 2 crashes, you're clearly not ready.
So if someone's doing the bulk of their flying FPV, why are they being examined line of sight if they don't intend to be flying that drone line of sight?
It's a valid point, actually. I'll raise it in our next achievement scheme meeting. So we always try. There you go, arms up. We're always open to constructive ideas, and that's a very, very valid idea.
Jack's about to set some fireworks off. He's that excited.
There's a lot of pilots who fly self-built drones, and they have the goggles on from the moment they take off to the moment they end up in a tree. Right, or land, and they wouldn't intend to be flying at line of sight because they might be flying within visual line of sight, but to get orientation on maybe a small quad at say 100 feet away from yourself, it's much easier with goggles on to pilot that than line of sight.
No, I agree.
I think there's always an argument that you should be able to take your goggles off and bring it down if you've got a problem. But of course, most people in that situation, because there's a delay going like that,
that's what you're talking
is
about.
you'd flick into angle.
Exactly
to
what I do.
time, especially me, because I'm like, where did I put my glasses? There they are. Where's my quad?
Exactly.
There it is, and bring it
I
down
have
that way.
a freeway switch on my controllers, which has always got red heat shrink on it to identify it, and it's a freeway switch. Middle is full acro, flick either direction, and it goes into horizon or angle, so that it levels off. It gives me a chance to get my eyes on it and orientate it. But no, in terms of the achievement scheme, it's like I say, I was brought in as a volunteer several years ago from my experience of multi-rotors to write a test, and that's why we did the A and the B certificate. Since they were brought out, we've actually tweaked them slightly, because the original one, because it was pretty much a copy of the heli, I've also tweaked the helicopter one, because originally you used to do certain exercises hovering, then you do a circuit exercise, hover, land, and what we've decided is if you can't take off and land repeatedly by BCERT, you shouldn't even be flying. So we've put all the hovering stuff together, land, all the circuit stuff together, land. Because what that allowed is for people who fly things like the 3D electric helicopters that might only get a 4-minute flight time, it means they've got a natural landing point in the middle of the test to swap batteries. And it's the same thing for a lot of the racing quads that might only fly for 3.5 to 4 minutes.
Yeah.
You've got that
4 minutes, you're doing well on some of those quads.
Yeah. Well, it's about setting your aircraft up for the test. It's the same with any aircraft. Right. Something like the one I showed a minute ago, my line of sight one there, that will fly for an easy 20 minutes if I don't, but it will fly for 4 minutes if I'm flying like a hooligan.
Do you have anyone come to do those certs with, say, a tiny whoop or something that's just somewhat ludicrous?
Some of the tests are. So you take
There's an answer for that one
minimum
from
1 kilo.
Andy Simmons there.
So Andy Simmons has said if it's under 300 grams, it's classed as the basic proficiency test.
Yeah.
So you literally can't do an A test unless you've got a 300-gram drone. That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
can't you just add lead to it?
The largest one has battery you've ever seen in your life.
The reason I wrote that requirement for 300 grams, very few of the tests, you take the helicopter test, there's no weight requirement. The glider test, there's no weight requirement. Fixed wing is a minimum of 1 kilo, and it has to be able to roll on the floor, so it has to have undercarriage. With the camera drone test, multi-rotor test, there's no weight limit either. The camera drones, we're fully aware there's going to be a lot of people with Mini 2s that want to take that test. So to make it easier for the examiners, we've put a 300-gram limit so that if anyone turns up with a Mini 2 that clearly states on it 249 grams, because you cannot switch the GPS off to do the A certificate, we don't want people sneaking through by mistake. So that's why there's a 300-gram limit on that one. So in terms of doing the regular multi-rotor test or the helicopter test, the circuit length is a minimum of 50 meters and about 30 meters wide. So you're talking a good, much bigger than a tennis court. So when you think about something that's probably only 2 inches
you need
wide,
some LEDs.
Yeah, flying that to 30 meters distance away from yourself and then going a further 30 meters out laterally
in full macro could be entertaining.
It'd be very entertaining. The other thing as well is that the tests have to be flown outdoors, and in terms of the wind, we have got an indoor test, by the way, for aeroplanes, the shockies and stuff like that. But in terms of the test, it has to be flown outdoors. So again, it's kind of self-limiting. So if you take something like the little nano helicopters you can get that are 4 inches long and 30 grams, theoretically you could use that for your helicopter test, but you're just not going to be able to see it, and it's not going to fly in the wind.
I learnt on the little Hubsan H107s, which were complete rubbish, and they didn't have a camera. And I used to fly those things around the park. I only lost one of them. But yeah, I used to fly 30 meters out, definitely. Just orbit myself.
But it's semi-self-limiting in that respect. But coming back to Jack's, the point there that made Jack happy, I'm chairman, like I say, of the Achievement Scheme Committee. So it's a very valid point that a lot of people do go. And I saw a lot of the guys at the BDRA race event that can't hover line of sight because they've purely done FPV. They've always flown with the goggles on. So it might be worth working out if we can create some form of ACERT or even a BCERT for them.
A couple of questions I have. One is for the racing ACERT, the FPV racing ACERT or whatever it was.
The extension,
The extension, that was the one.
Yeah.
Do they have to do the fail-safe and all that check-in bit? Because that's like key for a racer. Having organised quite a few events with FPV racing at it, if you can make sure that they all can do the check-in process in under 30 seconds, that would be amazing.
Well, we don't time anything, so
that you're on this channel.
Yeah.
The one thing we've done with the FPV extension for racing extension, so we've got an FPV extension which is you could do with a multi-rotor, a fixed wing, or anything, which is kind of just flying around the sky essentially. The racing one involves gates and everything else. It does state on there about sort of a smooth, steady speed. So what we haven't done is put time limits on anything. We don't want to encourage actual racing during the test. It's more about competency. But coming back to your question, range check has to be explained to the examiner by the candidate. That's written in the rules. The examiner does have the right to ask them to demonstrate how the range check is done. And fail-safe is compulsory to be tested on all tests now. That was in place about 3 months ago. So if somebody does their fail-safe and the fail-safe doesn't work, what we actually do is we abort the test and it doesn't count as one of their 2 attempts on the day. So the fail-safe is a requirement now as part of all the tests.
Cool. There was another question I had, but I've forgotten what it was now, so I'll let someone else jump in.
No. I was just going to say, in terms of doing something like an FPV only test for the A, direct to FPV, it would be great to get some ideas from you guys on what sort of maneuvers and exercises we can put in. Because one of the things that I was conscious of writing the FPV racing extension for the A is not everybody has access to gates or poles or flags. So it's trying to write something where it's like, okay, so
natural obstacles like trees or signposts,
exactly.
or
go
whatever
around 3 flags or weave in and out.
Go
of 2
between
trees.
those trees, avoid scraggle, and get them to land in a space. The number of people I fly with that can't land and they just go along and disarm randomly is awful.
The BDRA,
it's
we had Eric Liku from the BDRA had a good level of feedback into the original FPV racing extension along with his committee. And one of the things to that is they have to land in a 2-meter designated box. And again, we do allow for the quad to tip over after landing because you know what it's like. Sometimes you land and the board fights.
You've got a bottom-mounted battery. I mean, you don't have much choice.
Exactly. So if it's dropped, we've also allowed for example, the drone to be dropped the last 6 inches. That wouldn't be a fail. But landing in a 2-meter box, if they land in the 2-meter box and it cartwheels 4 meters out of the box, then that would be a fail.
You probably don't want to be doing this test on a 60-degree camera angle. Then you want to be a little more conservative.
Where's Blue Owl? Where's Blue Owl? Yeah, I mean, my other question, which I've now remembered, was because many of the BDF members, as you were saying, are likely to just be kind of country members, as it's called in the BMFA, so not affiliated with a club, just likely flying out on their own. How are they going to kind of make use of the achievement scheme? What's the best way for them to do that?
So examiners themselves are assigned to clubs. So they're called club examiners because the club asks for someone to be tested as an examiner, and then they ratify them every 12 months as part of their annual renewal process for the club affiliation. What we do for country members is you can still basically ask. So all club examiners could do a country test for them. So you could go to their club and do the test. So the best way to do it, though, is to contact the BMFA, and then we can put you in touch with the local achievement scheme coordinator for your area. So, for example, in my area, the Northwest area, we've got Kevin Watson. He would then ask a local club if they can help, or we've got a network of area chief examiners, which I'm one of. I'm a fixed wing, heli, and multi-rotor area chief, and we're quite happy to meet people at clubs, or in the case of a country member, probably down the local woods, as long as it's not a dogging hotspot. I'm not being. As soon as I started saying that, I was sitting there thinking in the back of my mind, I'm not being lured into the woods for something dodgy. But
Welcome to Let's Thrown Out.
But no, we've got a network there for the country members as well. And also, I should get mentioned. Andy's probably screaming this at the keyboard. We have the BMFA National Centre in Grantham, where you can go along, or Buckminster, where you can go along, and we have achievement scheme events once a month. So our next one's coming up on the 27th and 28th for this month, and we go up there. We have 3 or 4 chief examiners minimum normally on there, and we can do any of the achievement scheme tests. If it's a CSET or an examiner test, we just need it booked in advance because that has to go back through the area. But essentially, we're there to help facilitate. So we did a couple of camera drone tests last month at the August one.
So if people aren't members of a club, then they can go up to Grantham and
they can come up to the BMFA Buckminster site, or they can get in touch with their local area, area coordinator and assess something in that way. So there's more than one option, basically.
So Jack would need to take his oxygen cylinder to go that far north of London.
Does he get a nosebleed past the M4? Is it that kind of,
I don't even like going on the M4. It's too close to Wales.
He goes up to like kind of curry sauce with chips level, and he's just really distressed. He gets to like gravy with chips. He just doesn't know what the fuck's going on. He's lost it.
Just start sweating, rolling on the floor, crying.
I'm going to say this just to
my mum
because I know he's watching, but don't go to Yorkshire where they call a bread roll a tea cake.
What?
That'll throw you a loop.
But you go further north, and then you got Tunnock's tea cake, the old Scottish.
Yeah.
What tea cake?
So all this stuff, all the qualifications, they seem to be around a lot of people trying to harmonise a lot of this drone stuff internationally. So we don't have weird little esoteric British laws and weird little esoteric French laws. What do you think is going to happen in the future? We've got a lot of drone stuff that people seem to be standardizing on labeling, but there's still room for self-built stuff. Do you think there's going to be a rush to try and put us into a new category in the future?
The category is already there. So, coming back to my myth-busting theme for the evening, there's a lot of people that are saying that we won't be able to fly anything that we've got after 2022. So the 1st of January 2023 is when the legacy drones are no longer flyable and you have to have one of the C-class drones. All it means is that every drone that we've got now goes into the A3 open category. So you basically go back to the original hobby regulations that we had before all of this ever started. So
Perfect.
As Andy loves to say, when all the new regulations came in on the 1st of January this year, nothing's changed, nothing's going to change. But you'll still have access to Article 16, because that's one of the things that we've done as the Bmfa. When I say we, I tend to mean Dave Phipps, our champion, as it were, when he goes out to the DFT. The stuff that they've done, the Article 16, there's no legacy requirement on that either. So when you look at a racing drone that is self-built, it's not got a C-class rating on it, it's going to go to the A3 open category, or it's going to go to, you can fly it in Article 16. So come the 1st of January 2023, and answering your question, what do we do in the future? What we're pushing, or what the CAA and the DFT and us, we're pushing, is everyone to be a member of some form of organisation. The Bmfa have always had the policy, the policy strength in numbers. We've got over 30,000 members. So when the CAA first did the operator ID, and it was going to be £16.50, and there was going to be all these different regulations and so on, when Dave Phipps went into the meetings and he went in there with the RPAS lot and everyone else, he doesn't just stand there as Dave Phipps. He stands there as the voice of 30,000 plus people from 800 plus affiliated clubs. So when he stamps his foot, it's a loud stamp. And that's why we're opening up the British Drone Flyers. When you look at the statistics, there's 30,000 plus members, as I say, but there's over 200,000 registered operators in the UK. And that's just the people who bothered to operate, register, let alone those that probably don't even realise that they need to. So there's nearly 200,000 plus extra people that we can bring in to make that voice even stronger. So I think there's some people who are accusing us of just trying to cash in on the latest thing, and it's not about that. It's trying to create strength in numbers to protect the hobby, to protect what we do as a passion.
So if you had a kind of pragmatic approach going forward, that people are going to want to increasingly legislate, and we've seen people trying to put remote ID solutions on drones in America. What do you think is the kind of pragmatic position that you would take going forward? Are you going to just draw a line in the sand and say this is it, or are you prepared to make amendments in future?
I think you always have to sort of be prepared to make some amendments, because you just don't know what's going to come 2 years around the corner. If you take, for example, things like Amazon and Google that have all been talking about delivery drones and what have you, some people will say it's a pipe dream. Some people will say, yeah, it's going to come in 6 months. I'm more realistic. I think it's still a bit of a dream, but it's on its way potentially. So I think if it happens, that's when you have to sort of think about how to do it safely and how to integrate it safely. So I think you have to sit there and think, yeah, the rules might have to change, but how? We just sort of have to see how it develops, I suppose.
Okay, so you're going to wait to see if the situation changes. You don't have your own agenda that you're looking to push forward at this point?
No, I mean, the beautiful thing with being part of the Bmfa is, I obviously have my own personal opinions. I've got things that I have to think about.
When I say you, I mean the Bmfa, not Chris,
so
the Bmfa member.
I'm more than happy to share personal opinions, but personal opinions obviously don't necessarily reflect on the Bmfa side of things, because when we do anything with the Bmfa, it's not about individuals, it's about that mass of 30,000 people, and also the hundreds of thousands of people that aren't registered that we can offer support to. There's a lot of rules that, because I've got an operator PFCO, so I've got a PFCO, an operational safety case, I've then got 2 flyer IDs, 2 operator IDs, one for the company, one for me. I've then got a PFCO number, so I've got 9 different serial numbers. Then every drone has to have its own serial number. So you sit there and you look at this, and it's got 4 different serial numbers on it just to fit with the regulations. And you think, that's gone silly now.
Yeah, you can do that when you've got a giant hex. You maybe try and you want to fly a little freestyle around somewhere. It gets more challenging. Get a number on each arm, but if you have a 5th number.
Yeah. So personally, I think some of the regulations, because there's a little bit of complexity created by that hobby to commercial aspect. But in terms of the operator ID, I think it's a good idea. There's a lot of people out there now with these drones that are fully autonomous. You press a button, it hovers. There's no guarantee that they won't set it up wrong, forget to do a compass calibration before flying the Mini, and it joins the revolution against mankind and spanks off towards the horizon as part of Skynet.
Back to China.
It's not just about blaming people for accidents. It's that, okay, so there's the drone. It's gone somewhere. We can track it back to who owned it, give it back to them and find out what happened. And then once we know what happened, we can educate the rest of the people to stop them doing the same. It's that the CIA do adopt that education over blame approach to a lot of things. The CIA don't actually do any prosecutions themselves. They'll only ever really advise the Crown Prosecution Service who would do the prosecution.
Oh, that is scary.
But so yeah, I mean, regulations. Go on.
No, it's all right. Go on.
As I say, regulations aside, I think things could potentially change. What we need to do is just stay ahead of them and try and make sure that we're always doing the best for our membership at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, there's with strength in numbers, and I have heard it said, from the meetings where there's lots of stakeholders getting in, from manned aviation, all sorts, and sort of the actual literal numbers of people that the Bmfa are representing makes them actually quite a big kind of feature in those meetings, because there's a lot of people that fly model aircraft compared to.
We're probably bigger than I don't know the true statistics, so I might be talking them out of my back end, but we're probably bigger than a lot of the organisations put together.
Yeah, sort of. When you look at sort of the Microlight Association or Light Aircraft Association, the numbers aren't really that big, and the BMFA is actually quite a big organisation and has quite a lot of weight to throw around in these kinds of things.
Also, the age. We're 100 years old next year, and one thing that does help an awful lot is that the BMFA back in the 90s got model flying recognised as a sport. So when you look at America, for example, it's actually just a hobby over there. So it's very hard to enforce anything when it comes to a hobby. Whereas when it's a sport in the UK, there's a certain element of responsibility to councils, not a expected responsibility, but a suggested responsibility to provide facilities for sporting, endeavours. So when it comes to model flying, you've got to kind of support it in a way because it is a sport, not just a hobby.
I think the most important aspect of that to take away is we can now call ourselves athletes.
So, for me, a personal opinion, if you can smoke a cigar and drink a pint while you're doing it, you're not an athlete. But
darts back in the day.
I wouldn't class a
I've never managed to
athlete, but
never managed to drink a pint while flying. Kudos.
It's a sport. I think the thing with sport is the definition is you can compete, you've got a competition, and that's what we do at the BMFA. We create the nationals, we create all the different eventing competitions that people can come and compete in, whether that's directly ourselves or through the various different governing bodies of different disciplines.
Cool. Is there anything else that we've missed as kind of like unique selling points of BDF or
upcoming events?
In terms of selling points, I think the selling points, we did mention earlier about insurance, but just to clarify on that, if you are looking to fly commercially, BMFA insurance is only covering you for hobby flying. You need insurance that complies with EC 785/2004 if you want to fly commercially. So yeah, that's there. Plenty of insurance companies out there that do pay per day and annual policies, but the BMFA is a hobby policy. So I think the main benefit of joining the BMFA or the British Drone Flyers is you're not just getting insurance. So there's a lot of companies out there that might just offer an insurance package. We're here to offer support. So yes, a lot of people probably join to get that insurance, the public liability insurance, but we offer the personal indemnity insurance. When you affiliate as a club, they get landlord's indemnity insurance and other policies that cover stuff that happens. So if you set up a model flying club, for example, and somebody like a neighbour
or a drone club.
Or a drone club, yeah. Well, model flying is drones to me at the same time. So if somebody sets up a flying club, a drone club, and somebody decides to try and sue the landlord of the club for allowing the activity on their site, that's part of the BMFA support that we will do. In terms of setting up a club, again, compared to somebody that's just selling insurance, we've got on our website, and this is the nice thing, is all of our information is on the website, easy to access for free. We're not trying to make money out of people. We're not a profit-making business. We're a charity, essentially. So things like there's a, what's it called, club constitutions. So if you're setting up a club, you sort of said earlier, some clubs could just be 5 mates that all know each other and they get on well. The next club could be 150, 200 people holding regular racing events. But whichever club you're in, what if one person decides to be an absolute pain in the neck and cause problems? How do you get rid of them? How do you kick them out? And a good constitution is important to protect every member of a club. There's also tenancy and landlord agreement templates that you can download, so that if you're looking to rent land off a farmer to set up a club, that's all available. And then, like I say, the additional insurance that goes on top. But probably the biggest benefit of joining the BMFA or the BDF is access to the Article 16. So when the Article 16 first came out, it was over 4 different groups. They're now split, and it's separate individual Article 16s depending on which group you're in. Mm-hmm. So, for example, with the BDRA, when they were racing, because they were racing under Article 16, they had to be BMFA members. So we had a few that turned up that were FPV UK members, so we just gave them free insurance for the weekend so they could still race. That was another way that we helped support the BDRA event there.
I did not know that the Article 16 had been split up from the different associations.
Right. So it was 4 associations originally. The Scottish Aircraft Association have lost theirs now.
Different.
So they didn't fill out their paperwork or something. I'm not entirely sure what's happened. So a lot of the Scottish Aircraft Association, they're joining the BMFA because they want access to Article 16.
Means more paperwork to read to be up on everything. I've definitely given up on keeping up on everything.
A quick kind of comparison. If we have FPV UK members, I'm an FPV UK member myself. We might be looking at BMFA. What's the quick comparison on those two?
Well, the main one is obviously, you've both got Article 16s. If you wanted to race in the BDRA events, they have to be BMFA members now because of the Article 16 split. So that's one probably crossover element that you're going to have to be through there. But then it's that information side and the support side of things. We've got people in an office where you can pick up a phone if you've got a technical question about legality. If you get into trouble, for argument's sake, if somebody starts having, if you're flying in a model club and the local council, for example, try and shut your model club down, you can come to us and we'll actually then come and not only just give you support on the phone, but potentially attend meetings with you and the council and see what we can do to help. Andy has just done that recently for a model club that lost their site on a local park because their park decided to put in bylaws on flying. The club were like, we've been here for years, 30, 40 years. What's gone wrong suddenly? So Andy went down, helped them negotiate risk assessments and everything else so that they've now got access to use the site again. So that's the sort of thing that we can offer that goes beyond, companies that just take money for insurance, essentially.
Got it.
Yeah. So plus things like the BDF news you've got access to all the achievement scheme.
More of a complete package then.
Yeah, it's just sort of a bit of everything, rather than just insurance, essentially. Yeah.
I feel we have to as well point out something like, again, I forgot. I'm doing terrible this evening. Because Andy's always keen to point out that to make a BMFA club, you don't need
to set
much.
A club up.
You all you need is 5 BMFA members, and you don't need a site. You don't need anything else. You can just start with 5 BMFA members and go from there. And BMFA offer help sorting out sites and sorting out constitutions and everything else from there.
Yeah, they decided to make club affiliation the most complicated thing in the world. You just need 5 members and you fill out 2 online forms. That's it. And then
why not one form?
Affiliated club. So we can offer advice on how to negotiate with tenants and stuff like that. So if you've found a farmer, for example, that thinks, well, okay, I might be interested, here's the cost, but what's the risk to me? If you don't feel confident to have that conversation with people, that's where we're willing to help, whether it's a phone call, a Zoom call, or even coming out to site face to face to meet the farmer and say, look, let's arrange a day where we bring a few drones down. We'll sort of do a demo. You can see what to expect, what the noise will be like. And
here's the inherent value of high velocity bird scarers.
Yes. And bird shredders if you get close enough.
Unless you've got a buzzard fan, then not so much.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's the key benefit is, like I said, the support and the access to everything that's available. Really. Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
And what is the
Thank you.
price of joining the Bfma? I never know this
The
answer.
Bmfa is £38 for 12 months. The BDF is the same, £38 for 12 months. The Bmfa option, because it runs out in December every year, as you go through the year, you start to get discounts towards the end. So 1st of July, you get a discount, 1st of September, and a bit more of a discount, so on. So that way you're not sort of overpaying. But the BDF will always be the same price, essentially, unless we have to adjust the price for next year because of whatever happens, inflation and so on. But the BDF, it's a 12 months from the day you join, so you'll always get the full price, as it were. There are family memberships as well. So if you're a junior member, for example, there's discounted rates available through the Bmfa family memberships. So if you're a junior under 18 at the time of joining, there's a discount. I think it's £17 off the top of my head. If you're a family, so if you want to bring your kids along, the senior member signs up at £38, and I think it's £11 a junior. And then there are scout memberships as well for associated groups. So groups of Cub Scouts can join the Bmfa, where someone like the scout leader joins up as the senior, or cadets, stuff like that. And then they can have, say, half a dozen assigned juniors, but those juniors can change because they'll be bringing in new groups of, students, etc. all the time. So there's various different packages through the Bmfa. The BDF, we've kept it fairly simple because we just basically accept that most people at the moment are just going to be one membership type. They're either going to be a senior or a junior. We might get a few family ones join, at which point we'll have to sort of work it out. So there is an element of, pluck the thumb, stick it in the air and see which way the wind goes.
Suck it and see.
Yeah. So it's, we're here to learn from what the members want. So it's like we pointed out earlier with the ability to think, well, actually, we need a different type of achievement scheme test. If people come to us,
I think that the FPV suggestion seemed to get a lot of interest in the chat, and it was really great to hear you say that that's something you'd look at. I think there's so many people who only fly FPV. That would be a very popular thing to look at.
No, it's a very valid point. I mean, we did the FPV extension, but it's a very valid point that a lot of people wouldn't get to an extension. They need to go straight to it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Should we answer Tony's question?
You can ask Tony's question.
If I earn money flying, am I insured already as I'm with the Bmfa?
If I earn money flying?
Yep.
If you earn money flying, then you're flying commercially, so not through the Bmfa.
I think you'd probably say it's just cash in hand and it doesn't count.
The thing to remember with commercial flying, it's not just about money changing hands. It could be, something of worth. If you're given a camera, if somebody gives you a GoPro in exchange, it's commercial gain, not cash gain. So it's anything that creates a benefit to yourself, really.
Got to play the devil's advocate and think of what the tax man would say.
Yeah. My advice is, if you're ever sitting there thinking, do I need commercial insurance or hobby insurance, then the answer is you need commercial insurance, because if you can't sit there and go, I'm just flying for fun, it's a hobby flight, then you're not doing a hobby flight. It's there's a lot of people think, is there a grey area in the middle? No.
What happens if you do a flight and you put it on YouTube and you get advertising revenue from that, but you didn't intend to?
So that's if your purpose of the flight was a hobby flight, then that's different. So when you think about commercial gain, so a classic example might be for myself. Let's say I put up my Mini 2, I take photographs of my own house to then sell my house, to give to the estate agent to sell my house. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've not done it to make any money for myself. I've done it to sell my house as part of a sale of my house. I already own the house. I already have that money. There's no profit to be made. On the flip side, if I'm the estate agent that's taking photographs of people's houses, I'm doing it to help sell those houses to make myself money through a transaction. So me doing it for myself is a hobby flight. The estate agent doing it for his company is a commercial flight.
Cool.
It's
Should we
the intent of the flight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Should we leave it there, guys?
I think that's the time to wrap up. We're
no worries.
Diving into the weeds.
Yep, you've been
you
listening to
very
Let's
much,
Drone Out. Thank you. Don't forget, thank all our patrons, all our supporters, everyone who tuned in. Thank you guys. Big shout out. We had a quite a good turnout today. So the lovely Clive, Tailspin, Richard Warwick, Curry Kitten, of course he's here. Lurgy, Andy Simmons, Ben Sparrow, Failsafe FPV, RC Robotics, Richard Warwick. Oh, Zero, the best mod in the
Quickly.
world.
Reach for the fireworks.
With 10. Sorry to Richard Warwick, who got timed out by Curry and his fat fingers. Numbskull, always a pleasure to have you. Win Davis, you lovely, lovely man. Tailspin, I think I've already said you. Ryan, lovely, lovely man. Fossil Stuff, hello mate. Numbskull.
Don't forget Tony.
And my darling wife, Tony. We can get the Bmfa family pack. Mark Saltler. Shiny Video Stuff. Of course, he's here. Badger FPV. Shady. And anyone else I forgot. Caroline. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Zero. Woo. Nipples. Wacky Wes. Hello, mate.
Wacky Wes.
Seen you for a while.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Yeah, massive shout
Thank
out.
you.
You've been joined by our Lord and Master Andrew / Frank.
Bye.
Party time over at Chris's place.
I'm joining the fireworks by putting it in party mode.
Oh, fantastic. Everyone's favourite Curry Kitten.
Goodbye.
Shiny Video Stuff Stephen.
Cheers.
Disco Chris from the BMFA, Drone Support Officer. Yes, sir. And I've been Jack, Bright Until I Fly. You've been listening to Let's Drone Out. Thank you very much.